It's an opportunity for me here today to speak about economic reforms in Morocco, the economic freedom score, some public policies, highlights of what's going on well in this area, and of course, lowlights. But I'll finish with some recommendations. Morocco got its independence in 1956. And in 1956, there were a couple of players. I mean, the king and the monarchy was one of the players, but there was also political parties. And one of those political parties is my party. And one of the leaders, very famous at that time, his name was Mehdi Ben Barka. And Mehdi Ben Barka was the leader of the Tricontinental. And the Tricontinental is really how to bring all the non-aligned countries, but also communities. It was more about people. In 1966, they did a big Havana event, and they wanted to get the Soviet Union and China in this Tricontinental. And of course, as you can guess, I mean, Mehdi was pushing really for socialism, centralized economies, and the path of Morocco would have been very different if at that time that view prevailed. In fact, the king's view prevailed, and this is how we went through being an open economy, capitalism, free initiative, and so on and so forth, and I'll deep into this. But that's important to put things into context and go back to history to explain the path. Where do we stand on economic freedom? Well, Morocco's score is 61.9. So it puts us we are the 86th freest economy in the 2018 index. Just to give you a sense, we had the highest score in the Maghreb region and the 7th among the 14 countries in the Middle East and North Africa region. Just for the record, for example, France scores or ranks 71, and the US 18th. So being 86 in this score is not that bad for us. The Moroccan economy, just to give you a sense, is around 100 billion euros in GDP. We are the 4th largest economy in Africa, and we are 34 million people living in Morocco. Let me talk about now the highlights and really what makes Morocco stand in this economic index score. I can put all those, under these buckets of, in this index score or the freedom score index, they have 4 buckets. They have what they call rule of law, government size, regulatory efficiency, and open markets. I don't want to make my presentation academic. He can do that, not me. So I'm going to be very practical and talk about few things just to illustrate how this economic index scores high in Morocco. Well, imagine a country where free initiative is the rule. And free initiative means that anyone wants to do, open a business, he can pretty much do it. Of course, if you go to some regulated, I would say, jobs, I mean, not everyone can open a shop and becomes doctor. I mean, fortunately in Morocco. But you can become a mechanic, you can start a business in commerce, in trade, you can do almost what you want. We went further 3 years ago, and we have this new status that is called the auto-entrepreneur status that hopefully facilitates, people's insertion to the formal, world in economy. Before you can be in informal business. Now with this, because you don't want to avoid taxes, now with this auto-entrepreneur status, it makes it easier and you can go and do that. Another important aspect. I'm saying you can be an entrepreneur, and that's true, but being able to do it and having the capability to do it is a different thing. I mean, and I'm talking here about financing. If you don't have financing in economy, you can start a business, but you might die, quickly, or even you cannot start it. So Morocco has worked very hard to make sure that there is access to financing. Well, access to financing, you can have it first through banks and the SMEs, and I'm sure that my colleague Jean-Louis Billon will tell that. I mean, as a former Minister of SMEs, the first thing they will tell you, if you go to any country, is we don't have enough financing from the banks. Well, that's true. But on the other hand, you can put mechanisms to facilitate the financing. And that's what we have done in Morocco. For example, we have this body that is called the Caisse Centrale de Garantie. It's a guarantee, Caisse Centrale de Garantie. It's a government body that sits below the Minister of Finance. And this body's rule or objective is to facilitate the financing in the economy. So they have this guarantee now that is government money that will be given to banks in order for them to help, or to push them to finance SMEs. So if an SME comes, they need money from the bank might say, okay, I'm reluctant, then they go to the La Caisse Centrale de Garantie, and the Caisse Centrale de Garantie, if they give them their guarantee, then they will be inclined to give that loan to the bank. The other thing that we have put in place, and I was in charge at that time in the Ministry of Industry, we have put what we call les fonds publics privés d'equity. It's public-private funds, equity funds. Basically, we took some money. I convinced the Minister of Finance to give me some money. It's always hard to convince the Minister of Finance. And I went and I did a tour with some private equity funds, and I told them, listen, we're going to put 30 million, you have to bring 70 million, so it's 100 million euros that we're going to put in those two funds. Then we're not going to ask for higher return on our money. So it will allow you to take more risks to finance, SMEs. That's the way it worked, and that's the way it worked pretty fine. The story goes, it's really interesting, and I had no clue at that time. But 5 years later, I was not minister anymore, and there is this friend of mine who comes to me and proposes to me this business to start, to put some money in, and I did, because it was in IT, and I'm former IT professional. And in fact, this fund that I put in place financed part of the venture. I didn't plan it, but believe me, but that's really how the story goes. It goes that if you put the right tools in place, then it will really fuel, the economic investment in those countries, because we're not as sophisticated, by no means, as what developed countries, Europeans or American countries. You don't need in the United States to have the government going and seeding some money to finance SMEs. I mean, private people will do it. But in our cases, we do have to give them a little, push. Let's go to trade freedom. I believe that we have done a lot. Just to give you a sense, we have 51 free trade agreements with the rest of the world. I'm cheating a little bit because European Union, I'm counting them as 28. But in fact, you really have 28, free trade agreements with any country in some sense. So, and the other thing that is not that funny is all FTAs, we have we have a negative balance on all those 51, FTAs. So why do we do that? Well, we do it because we believe that opening the country will push our SMEs to be more competitive. It will take out all these undue benefits that some people had at that time. We call them rente, because they have this license, import licenses to import different things, and they were making a lot of money. But there were just few of them that were making a lot of money. So by making sure that you open the economy, then you projecting yourself in the future to reap the benefits of this openness. Small, anecdote. When I took over from the former Minister of Industry, the day it was back in 2007, he made one recommendation to me, and believe me, it's true. He said, you'll have a lot of industrial actors coming to you, and asking you to suspend the dismantling of the barriers, don't listen to them. And in fact, even if I want to listen to them, we had this commitment with the European Union to dismantle those barriers over time. Because when you sign an FTA with the EU, you cannot, the day after you sign them, have an open zero-tax economy. Otherwise, you kill the whole system. So you do it over time. They open it the next day, but they give us, it's asymmetric. It's not symmetrical, and that's the way it should be. The other thing that is important to understand is when you have this type of discussions with the players, what makes you, lower import duties on some specific products? Well, you have to really think about the whole, industry itself, the whole sector. So, for example, if you have import duties on raw materials that are higher than the finished product, then you have a problem because you want to develop your own industry. So normally it should be the other way around. So these are the type of things that, you sit down with the industry players and try to explain to them. But of course, those who are just doing commerce, trade, are importing finished products, they want to have they don't care about the raw materials and, the semi-product and all the people that are producing those products. So in our countries, we really need to do what we can to make sure that we create local added value locally. And this has to do, and the import duties are part of those tools. The other thing that I would say on this side, on this topic is ECOWAS. We have the 51, FTAs, but we want to be part of ECOWAS, which is now because we have, now we're a strong player in Africa. We do have a lot of business with different players. We are, I think, the largest foreign investor in Ivory Coast as Moroccans, but we want to integrate that ECOWAS zone to be part of this and to make sure that trade is happening. The other thing, if you want also to be good in trade, you have to think about logistics. And this is how we built a couple of years ago what we call Tangiers Med Port, which is one of the biggest port in the Mediterranean today. People don't know that, but Tangiers Med, in its second phase, and it's happening, should be as big as Rotterdam. So that's really, we're talking now high business, and and this has really lifted our connectivity index, maritime. It's sea connectivity index. In 2017, we are scoring now 76 over 100. And we are connected to 130 ports in 65 countries. And this is one of the reasons why Renault decided to make this mega plant in Tangiers, because they have this connectivity. So these are underlying factors. Let me talk about investment freedom now. There is this, it's called AAI, it's the Africa Attractiveness Index, and it's computed by EY, the former Ernst & Young. And in 2017, Morocco got the most attractive, index. It was quoted as the most attractive economy for investment flowing into Africa. To give you a sense, we did around 2.6 or 2.7 USD billion dollars in investment in Morocco, up 15%. You have to also to work on the business environment, of course, and we have a commission that works really on how to facilitate permits, construction permits, to register companies inline, so on and so forth. Role of government. Some people will tell you, well, and I'm sure that my friend Ahmed might tell me that, you just have to set up the right environment and it will flow, it will happen. Well, we believe that in those countries, it's not enough. You have to set up the right environment, business environment, infrastructure, whatever, but the government has also a role to play. And the best example I will give you, it's what we did in industry. We had that plan, we called it the Emergence Plan, and we as government, and I was driving that lead at that time, we said, where can we compete worldwide? And we brought McKinsey in, and we did this analysis, and we said, just like any company, and said, well, these are the Morocco global, sectors. And we said automotive, textile, electronics, aeronautics, agro-industry, and offshoring. And to give you, and then we had this strategy and we have the implementation that followed, because the most important thing is implementation. You can buy, strategy from those guys, but you have to implement it. The thing is, in 2016, our exports in automotive sector exceeded the exports in phosphates. That's concrete examples of what can be done, if you have a government that can also play that role. Lowlights, to be improved, and I'm gonna, because he's asking me to finish. Labor law, too rigid. I mean, from a socialist saying that, it's not an easy thing for me, but that's true. Second thing, competition board, not active enough. So if you have free economy and you have a competition board, then you might have some illegal, partnerships happening, and it's happening, unfortunately. Bankruptcy law doesn't, protect the investor, doesn't protect the company enough. They are thinking about, having a new one. And judicial system reform, which is a midterm play, but it has to happen. Closing remarks. I mean, choosing economic freedom have really important consequences on many areas. Economy. When you decide to open, well, you have to be prepared to accept social unrest. Because, Schumpeter said that, he calls it destructive creation, la création destructrice. I create something because I'm opening it, but those sectors that are not competitive are gonna die. The best example for us is ceramics. I mean, you have Spain next to you, and they have this major scale, high scale, large scale, factories, lower energy costs, boom, you import it and you're out of business there. And second thing on the economy, you have to make sure that you can resist, lobbies, because they will, if you take their advantages away, they will fight to keep them. On society, first of all, if you open your economy, well, you have to be sure that new values are going to want to install themselves in society. And this will bring conservatives to fight hard against those. Last but not least, we believe that, opening it, or, economic freedom will bring peace and prosperity. But it's not happening overnight. So it will happen over the midterm, hopefully, the long term for sure. But then you are running against time. Time means that when you do that, you need to make sure that you create enough jobs to, have all those unemployed youth finding a job. Otherwise, they won't give you all the time to build, the economy that you want to build. There will be maybe too much social unrest outside, but let's keep it, let's be optimistic. I think that's the right thing to do. Thank you.